Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a crazy homeowner association president complained about an old shed on my property. They claimed it violates the HOA rules and then stole my chainsaw to tear it apart. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. Hey there, I recently moved into an HOA-controlled neighborhood after being on the house hunting market for too many months. That's why it came as quite a pleasant shock when we found this place. Overall, the place was clean, modern, and stunning with lots of outdoor space as well. The previous occupants had put up a shed in the backyard and had left it there. It was gaudy and green but sturdy, with a decent amount of room to boot. I made sure to bring it up with the HOA during our negotiations, and they assured me that the shed could stay with no violations found on the property. This was before they made an incredible U-turn in their earlier decision about 2 weeks after they complained, which still baffles me today. I still wonder when they realized they did not like the shed, did they notice before the sale and waited for the money to go through, or have a change of heart later that month? However, I knew my rights and I was confident that since the HOA board in their blind haste had already approved that shed's existence in the closing agreement, they clearly were powerless to the issues they newly claimed. So I dug my feet in and I stood my ground against their requests. However, what should I have expected is that much like waving a juicy bone at a hungry dog, they did not accept being told no very easily, while what they considered the problem to still be at large. This started as small letters of notice with official-looking branding. These became regular visitors in my mailbox each week, followed by more ominous letters of warning instead, and as the weeks went by, each seemed to devolve into a slow and steady madness of broiling and untethered rage against their greatest challenge to authority. At this point, I had become quite well known in the neighborhood as a troublemaker. I did not mind it too much though, because most neighbors did not actually mind the structure, so it only made the persistence of the HOA on its utter destruction that much more confusing and obsolete. After their 13th letter, I stopped counting. I also immediately binned any envelope with the associated HOA branding on, which could only suggest it's another strongly worded statement voicing their immense and everlasting disapproval of me and my choices. But they must have eventually realized this no longer affected me, as the letters ceased and the visits started up again. First, it was assistants being directed to my door, then the president themselves, although they caught me at the worst time possible. Just as I was heading out the door on a hectic school run we were already late for, a large black SUV parked at the end of the driveway behind my car. With frustration, I stepped out to see what the heck was going on and was greeted by a middle-aged man who introduced himself as Mike, the president and representative of the HOA. He explained that he had taken time out of a very busy schedule to discuss our joint issues, but seeing as how I was not informed of this decision beforehand or consulted before the stranger showed up at my door, I then simply asked him to move his car. We spent the next few minutes in a back and forth as he tried to weasel his way into my house for a more comfortable discussion, while I stressed with increasing urgency that I had no time for him. Eventually, I think he got the memo and we parted ways, both made angrier and less cooperative by the experience. It surprised me when he dropped by again later that evening with a relative safe bet that I would be relaxing after a day at work / managing my children, so I would not be set to rush out again. Reluctant but willing, I let him inside for what he promised to be a short chat, revealing himself early to be trustworthy. Our talk continued well past the point I felt comfortable, while he insisted that the HOA had the right to make demands of my property. Seeing as how the man was not prone to accept argument or criticism, well, I pretended to agree only to get him out of the house 1 hour later. After a week passed, I got a knock at the door by Mike again, asking about the progress on removing the shed, to which I admitted a change of heart. He was furious. He shouted at me, swearing excessively, while trying to threaten my family to kick them out of the neighborhood if I did not obey the HOA rules. I stood silent and stunned, unable to react to his onslaught, which was only interrupted when a neighbor intervened and saved me some minutes later. Despite this, the president still roared at me red-faced as he approached his car and then steamed off, nearly hitting a cyclist in the process. This marked the first of many letters from the HOA, one of which summoned me to discuss the issue with members of the board. I almost convinced myself into attending until I saw the meeting would be held at the president's house after hours, making me wonder whether they were trying to hide the incident by keeping it out of the public eye. With that in mind, I began to distribute flyers the next morning, leaving them on notice boards, telephone poles, and mailboxes of certain friends of the HOA so that they would know the following. Saturday, 3 p.m. Community Center, discussion with the HOA board over the gaudy shed of number 41. I hoped that forcing them into a public setting would make them give up their persistence after everyone else realized what they were doing. Saturday morning, I get a phone call from an overly friendly HOA receptionist asking me to move the date of the talk due to issues with the board's schedule. I refused and hung up. They attempted to call 3 more times that morning, which ended when I unplugged the phone. I thought I had seen them later anyway. As a small crowd gathered in the hall, I realized that their concerns earlier may have been more genuine than deceitful. In the end, no members of the HOA board showed up, but a very apologetic lady, who sounded a lot like the mysterious caller, arrived 40 minutes late to explain their absence. However, by this time, much of the crowd had already left after being annoyed at their association's dismissal. Following this, they were quite clear in their frustration with me when they sent increasingly urgent fines higher with each day that their rule was not obeyed. When it reached $1,000, I replied back, warning them I would be contacting my attorney about the harassment, and this seemed to stop finally, and I was relieved that they had backed off even slightly. The next morning, I awoke to find what remained of my shed lying in pieces, scattered across the yard as if a sudden tornado or bear attack had targeted my shed. It was utterly destroyed. As I canceled my plans in order to clear up the mess, a curious neighbor, the same one who helped me against the president, wandered off to help. He said he wanted to show me something from his phone, dubious at first at the relevancy, but I said yes. The video he presented was taken at 1 a.m. from his upstairs window when he noticed someone sneaking around outside, going around my yard and forcing their way into my shed. After rummaging around in there for a few minutes, the figure came out wielding my chainsaw. Caught by the moonlight, their identity was clearly revealed as Mike, that HOA president. With a maniacal glee, they tore apart my shed before throwing my chainsaw into a bush and running off down the street. So I followed up on my threat that afternoon by calling my attorney with the evidence I had collected and presented my case. 2 weeks later, the HOA caved into my demands in the face of a very public and very humiliating court case, although their deeds were well known around the neighborhood by now, leaving their reputation in more pieces than my old shed. I also sued them for $100,000 in property and emotional damages, built myself a new shed with it, and it looks exactly the same. Mike resigned from the HOA along with most of the board members, and no one ever complained about my property again. The next one is titled Huge Child Support Issues. So some years ago I dated a girl, the relationship was bad, she was very controlling and abusive, and it ended up really bad and we broke up. I kept going on with my life, and after some years I got a decent job, enough to solve all my needs, have a comfortable life and make some savings. The thing is, a couple of months after getting my job, my ex contacted me. She first asked me to talk and I believed that she may want to reconnect or something, but she showed up with a 5-year-old child claiming he was my son and demanding for child support. I did not believe her, but the child age matched the time since we cut contact. I got advice from a lawyer, a friend of mine, to try to solve this out of court. I offered to take responsibility, pay all the costs and be an active part of the kid's life only after making a DNA test. Everyone was okay with this except for my ex. She acted offended and demanded to just give her the money she deserved. She used all the excuses she could and even contacted my family to tell them that I was trying to avoid taking responsibility of her child. When she ran out of excuses, the DNA test was finally made and surprise, I am not the father, and she was so mad with the result and cried about the money, saying it was unfair and she deserved it. However, she did not accomplish anything. Moving on to the last week, there was a little party on my parents' house. My brother, a friend and I were talking, and my brother started to joke about the situation with my ex. My friend and I started to joke too, and some of our comments were a little dark and bad, but we were far away from the rest of the people. Literally, we were on the opposite side of the house. And also, nobody else could hear us, at least that was what we thought. We were laughing like crazies when my sister appeared very angry and pushed me against a wall. She spied on us and heard our conversation, and she was really mad. She started to yell at us about how horrible we were because we were mocking a poor woman. Few hours later, when the party ended, she asked me to go to the kitchen with our parents, and she started to say how awful I was for the previous situation. Apparently, my ex had been in contact with her and she believed her vision, and that was her way to have an intervention. My brother and I were like, "Are you serious?" when she started to say how I forced my ex into being a single mother and that I have the moral obligation to help her. My dad only said that we maybe were being too cruel making jokes of her, but that I was not responsible for that kid. My mom then surprised all of us when she said, "Even if the kid is not yours, you're making more than enough money to support that child. You should have helped her." Since then, I'd been receiving texts my dad and my brother are on my side saying I'm not responsible for her, but my sister is telling me how horrible I am for ruining their lives. My mom only said, "It's your decision and I respect it. I'm just very disappointed that you ended up being so selfish." I'm aware that she doesn't deserve my money and I'm not planning to give her any, but the constant harassment of my sister trying to guilt me is just exhausting. Update: we had a talk about the situation. Again, she started on my ex's side, but after reading the post and all the comments and opinions, she realized she was wrong. I think the thing that hurt her the most was all the doubts about if she cheated on my dad and I was not his son, and if that was the reason that she was on her side. We had a very long conversation. She told me that she believed my ex because she was always so nice and kind with her that she decided to not believe me when I told her all the things she did to me during the relationship, because a good girl like her could never do something like that, so I must be lying. After that, she apologized to me and we are good now. On the other side, my sister, at first she decided that she wouldn't talk to me until I will take responsibility, but after some days I talked with her. She is totally on her side still, even after showing her everything. She said that none of that matters because a woman's word goes first and that's all the proof anyone could need. Also, she said that even if you're not the biological father, you have an effective responsibility with her, so you must be the man enough to take charge of them and start acting like a real man. She was a lost cause. Now, about my ex. I did some research and I found out that shortly after we broke up, she started dating another guy, or maybe she was cheating on me with that guy, I'm not sure, but they broke up some weeks later and she had multiple dates until she found out she was pregnant. I also found out that she had been trying to find a father to her kid for the last 2 years, and I was the next one on the list, but looks like she is desperate now, because she was never that aggressive with any other one before. Now the reason for this post. Some days ago, my ex and my sister came to my workplace. They made a big sign with my face that says, "He abandoned his child" and "irresponsible father," and started a drama saying all their BS. And by the way, guys, I have to say, OP has a terrible family. I really feel bad for him. I've never seen a family like this that is so unsupportive of one of their own. Anyway, their intention was to shame me and use the social pressure to force me to take charge of them. They literally said it. However, to not make the story too long, they were taken out of the place. I got problems for that scandal. Even after showing all the proofs and legal documents that showed they were lying, I was told that this better never happen again or I will be fired. After that, I contacted my friend, the lawyer, and we are now redacting a very long detailed paper against them, which is my ex and my sister too. They went too far and now I am going against them with everything. Maybe that would scare them enough to leave me alone. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that was an absolute roller coaster of a story, and seriously, I just cannot believe how unsupportive OP's family is. Seriously, what would you do if your sister or mother would backstab you in a way like this? Let us know in the comments, and now let's continue with the next one. It is titled, "Am I the jerk for doing this?" So my husband has a sore foot, no injury or medical condition that would explain the pain, but he has not been able to walk properly for about a week. Being the absolute pain in my butt that he has refused to go to the doctors until today, and apparently he preferred to just pop paracetamol and complain to me. It's gotten progressively more swollen and misshapen looking, and today it's gone a funny color and he cannot put any weight on it. So then I called our local GP, who has sent him to the walk-in clinic at our local hospital. We finally get seen and the doctor refused to even examine it. He told him without even looking at the foot that it was a sprain and he was not gonna prescribe him any painkillers, so not to ask. Then he started demonstrating some kind of exercise that involved going up and down on tiptoes and flexing the toes. I asked if he would please just look, as it has gone nearly black in some spots and looks similar to how my wrist looked when I broke it a few years ago. He huffed at me and asked where my medical degree was from. I put my back up and I demanded to see another doctor or his senior. I was the asshole here because it was not me being treated, so I get the thought that I was a pushy cow. Husband would not say boo to a goose in medical situations and would have accepted the doctor's instructions without any questions about actually needing to be examined. Then the doctor left and we heard him outside the cubicle telling the senior doctor that they have a confrontational spouse who thinks her WebMD searching qualifies her to instruct real doctors how to practice medicine. He also states that he suspects my husband of exaggeration to get opiates. By the time the other doctor arrived, I am seething and lay out exactly what went on and explained I only want someone to look at the foot before sending us away. So he looks, cue x-rays, an MRI, the good painkillers and a walking boot cast thing with potential to need surgery because he has got 7 stress fractures in that foot, probably from running. Admittedly worse than they needed to be because he didn't get any treatment when it first started to hurt. Second doctor and someone from the hospital admin come and apologize for the first doctor and ask if we want to make a formal complaint. So I did, because the outcome of his not listening to the patient or family could have been worse, but my husband did not. My husband said later that the first doctor may get sacked because of me complaining, and I should have left it because no real harm was done. Was it an a-hole move to complain? I don't usually have Karen tendencies, but he was just so patronizing and dismissive, and I kept thinking, what if it was a young mother with a sick baby and he dismissed that not everything would stand their ground and there could be really serious consequences. And by the way, edit, I have shown hubby the post and he is starting to realize how serious it could have been and is gonna email the admin guy we saw this afternoon. He gave us his contact details for my complaint. He also agreed that delaying treatment the way he did was incredibly stupid and has decided to chase up the counseling referral with the GP so he will be less useless in future medical situations. Comment number 1, not the a-hole, you were right to be insistent, the doctor was not doing his job properly. You did what you had to do. I'm gonna add that your husband is a huge a-hole here too. Not taking care of your health and making yourself a burden on your spouse is downright selfish. He needs a stern talking to. At the very least, you need to stop enabling him. In the future, stop dealing with these instances. If he dares to complain, call him out on the need to take care of himself and not be a burden on you. And here, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, what do you think about this story? Do you think that OP was the a-hole or maybe even the Karen in this situation, or not? Let us know in the comments. And guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please feel free to check out my Patreon over at patreon.com/ripeyoutube or join my YouTube membership program by clicking the join button to get access to even more exclusive videos. Thank you so much for your support and I will see you again tomorrow.